All right, what's going on, everybody? I'm Sage, and I just wanted to give a quick little video going over some of the Blue Post updates, as well as some of the internal fixes that they did that I didn't go over when I went over, all the nerfs and stuff that they broadcasted out. So the very first one is pretty exciting, a little bit, increasing our set bonuses is what I want to go over first. They gave us a buff to both of our set bonuses, not by a massive amount for the first one. So our two set is a set bonus that Ferocious Bite and Rip damage is increased by it was 5%. Now they upped it to 6%. That 1%, we'll take it, right? Any damage increase to both of those abilities is great damage because that's the majority of our damage. For our fourth set, each combo point spent, finishing moves increase your Rip, Rake, and Thrash damage by 2% and increase the chance for Shred, Rake, Swipe, Brutal Slash, and Thrash to critically strike by 2% for 4 seconds. So they kind of went in there and specifically made just our abilities increase the damage. Instead of just giving us a flat 5% crit, that would just like, if you looked at your crit modifier for your stat ability when you got the proc, it would show just a straight 5% increase. So everything that you do would get a 5% increase. Not only did they increase our damage for every combo point spent, but now they are increasing our critical strike by 2% per combo point instead of the one that it was previously. So we're getting double the amount of crit for the majority of our main abilities, all of our building abilities. I would say, and then our finishing moves are increasing a lot of our bleed damage, right? So they are converting it a little bit. They had some developer notes that say a lot of the values of the previous versions were getting successive ferocious bites during Convoke and Berserk. This version puts passive power into your bleeds and adds more crit to your builders to generate more combo points at all times. So honestly, I think overall it's definitely a net gain for us because you're getting increased crit, but now they're also giving us increased damage for that 4 set, which is definitely completely welcomed, right? We want more damage, we want more crit. Both of those things make a very good damage dealer. So that's the first news. This is not inside the game as of right now. This wasn't a hotfix. This is just one of the changes that they're planning on doing. At least the last time I played, which was like 2 hours ago or so, this was not inside the game just yet. The other thing I wanted to go over is since my previous video was going over all the recent nerfs and damage transitioning things from feral druids, is I want to go over one of the things that's going to kind of like even out a little bit with some of the nerfs that they did. The main one is going to be this down here. Fixed an issue causing damage dealt by rampant ferocity to be reduced by armor. So initially, rampant ferocity was being reduced. By all add armor, and so once they fixed this, it would have given a natural buff to rampant ferocity, and so they've nerfed the rampant ferocity. But then they also kind of they're triple dipping into it because they nerfed the initial damage from Ferocious Bite, then they nerf Sabretooth, and then they nerf Rampant Ferocity. So no matter what, we definitely got a net nerf to our Rampant Ferocity across the board, and it's noticeable because before where you could have the Rampant Ferocity in that 6+% range of your overall damage, now it's sitting down to where it's like 3 or so. So we definitely still got hit, but it's less of a hit because they fixed an internal issue that was reducing that damage by armor. The other thing is that Convoke has been hit twice, and I haven't really gone over those in any of the changes that they've done. The first one is up here where Ferocious Bites during Convoke hit as if they have 4 combo points instead of 5. So they're not doing full damage Ferocious Bites now. They're just doing 4 combo point ones. And that's just to reduce the overall power of Convoke because Convoke can be very, very strong if you get a lot of those 5 combo point Ferocious Bite finishers as well as you get them to crit. Right? So if you have all of those Ferocious Bites crit, then you could get that very good, very strong burst, and they're just limiting that down a little bit. From what it previously was. The other one is that Convoke the Spirits can no longer cast Tiger's Fury. So previously, this was one of the spells that it could pop off for us, and there were rotations that try to utilize this and make sure that you either use Convoke to generate Tiger's Fury for your rotation into Berserk, or vice versa, where you would use Tiger's Fury and then you try to at the end of your Tiger's Fury, you would Convoke within your Berserk to get Tiger's Fury going for the full duration of your Berserk, and then after your Berserk as well. Um, that was more of a mid-maxy thing, and that's not as big of a loss, I would say, because you will just have Tiger's Fury that you can consistently, get back up, especially with Predator and things dying, as well as we have the Raging Fury talent that can extend Ferocious Bite's capabilities. So we have those two things, and I just kind of wanted to throw those in there too. So like Rampant Ferocity did get nerfed, but it's not as horrible because they did fix an internal issue. And then Convoke is not as strong as it used to be, but it did also, and I've talked about this, it's not as strong as it used to be single target, but as far as like AoE, it did gain a lot of value AoE because of Rampant Ferocity allowing those Ferocious Bites to AoE, as well as Circle and Life and Death, making all the bleeds that it's proccing out, bleeds and dots, because if it procs Moonfire or like Rikes across multiple targets, all of that's happening faster because of Circle and Life and Death, so it is gaining value still. So kind of offsets it just a little bit, especially in AoE. Single target is more so just a straight nerf to dole it down a little bit. All right, and that's pretty much the blue posts I wanted to go over. The next thing I wanted to talk about with blue posts coming out is that there were some blue posts that, not for our spec specifically, not for Feral, but there were some pretty big ones that came out for our counterpart, which was the Balanced Druid one. And ultimately, this came out to literally like a 40% across the board nerf, which is shocking because even after they've gotten a change and adjusted, right, and the bugs fixed it with the fear talent and how they were abusing all those talents. After they fixed that stuff, then right before raid testing that happened, they nerfed him by 40%. But then the first raid test boss was a 4-target stacked fight, right? And boomies were still topping, if not, in the top 3 of most of that raid testing, which is crazy to think that they can get nerfed by 40% and still be perfectly competing with some of the higher end damage dealers in that scenario. But it is AoE, and that is supposed to be not supposed to be, but normally Balanced Druid's forte, right? Um, but then you would think that, okay, well, single target, they're going to do worse in then, right? But our last boss that we tested was the Mythic single target boss, and I currently they are still doing very, very, very good damage, if not top damage on that fight. However, that one might be due to a bug with Wrath and some issues going on with modifying that. Uh, and so if that gets fixed, and hopefully it does, and drops them down a little bit from being, you know, in the top tier of AoE and top tier of single target, because if you put people in both of those ranges, then that's where meta lies, right? That's where those meta classes come out. And Boomy is very, very strong still. So we're going to keep an eye out. My main concern is that this entire blue post, not only just for balance, but for paladins, for rogues as well, and demon hunters also. All of these classes that got hit really, really hard, and they're still in the top percentage. Demon hunters are still very, very strong on that cleave fight that I was mentioning. They were still one of the highest damage dealers. And in dungeons, they're still very, very strong. So I'm very concerned because there's outliers that are this far out of place. Now, it is nice that they are changing things, right? We got our tweaks and our changes and our adjustments, and I really hope that they leave us alone, because after Mythic Plus came out, which is the next topic I want to go over, after Mythic Plus came out and we started actually getting to test some of this stuff, even though there was a massive amount of bugs and issues. So pretty much Blizzard released 2 dungeons, the Azure Vaults and the Ruby Life Pools. They released those 2. However, in order to get to those 2, you had to find the teleport vendor, the dungeon teleport vendor, and then you had to be on a shard where that vendor actually worked. So that was the first big obstacle, and that's still actually an issue currently. Um, and you know how most of the time they make the vendors these massive Taurens? Well, now instead they made it this itty bitty little goblin girl. And then several hours later, they decided, okay, we're going to throw a much higher scale version of this goblin girl, like right next to her, a little bit down the way from her. But then they still haven't fixed the issue as far as it sharding out. So like you had to find a group leader that was inside the correct shard. in order for you to even attempt to teleport to a dungeon to try Mythic Plus. But then also, if your group leader did not set the dungeon to Mythic, you would teleport to a normal version of the dungeon, and then if you teleported out of that dungeon, it would put you in Dragon Isles. And anytime you're in Dragon Isles on the level 70 server, it teleports you back to your main city. And so if the group leader didn't do that and you try to jump out and get the dungeon set to Mythic and jump back in, some people would be able to get back in, some would get teleported out. And if they got teleported out, it was a 50-50 shot if they got onto a shard back when they got ported back to town, if they could even get in the dungeon. So that was very inconvenient. It still is. It's still an ongoing issue currently, that I hope that they fix, because they said that the Mythic dungeon testing for these two dungeons is only open for the weekend, and then they're going to shut it down, I'm assuming, and then fix things anyway, and then open some more up later on, which I really hope they do, because testing the Ruby Life dungeon, because eventually the Azure Vaults ended up not being able to work, because if you teleported there with a key and got a whole group to go through all the obstacles of actually getting into a shard and getting a group leader that put it on Mythic and so on, getting there, then the key wouldn't work. You could put it in there, you could press activate, and the key still wouldn't work. So most of my testing is through the Ruby Life, and Ruby Life, there's a lot of things that are super, super deadly. Especially one of the proto drakes that's added into the Mythic Plus level of difficulties, the Thunder one. Like, it does something called Rolling Thunder that can pretty much just one shot people, or it does about 50 to 70% of somebody's health every time it like pulses, and that kills a ton of people, obviously. So I'm hoping that they get more Mythic Plus out, because at a level 10, that stuff is super deadly. And 15s. I didn't do any 15s as of yet. Most of the time I've been in 10s because I'm plugging it, because I don't have my Mythic Plus team on beta. So currently, in the plugging scene, doing 15s is not where it's at, because that stuff is extremely deadly. Um, and on the level 10, it's still deadly. So I really hope that they open this stuff up for us. However, if we're talking about Feral Druid and its damage and its profile inside Mythic Plus, we are still doing very well. There are a few classes that are definitely broken. The main outlier would be a Beastmaster Hunter right now. There's something broken with their beast cleave and their barb shots that's making them infinitely be able to do damage with them, and they're doing about 3-4 times as much damage as everybody else, and it's super noticeable. So it is completely bugs and issues, and they will fix that. So that's not exactly concerning. But as far as like the other contenders for damage, overall damage is sitting somewhere in that 50-ish K range for the majority of dungeons I've done, and we're right there with them all, if not beating them. So I think Feral Druid's in a very good spot, as well as our utility. We get so much healing that we can push out, and our regrowths are definitely lifesavers inside of some of these dungeons as we're trying to survive them. Being able to off heal as much as we can, as well as we have our bash for stuns, because there's so many casters now. We have our bash for stuns. We obviously have our melee interrupt, but then we have Typhoon as well, and then we have Ursol's Vortex. So having all of that together really helps us give value to the group. Also, we're bringing Mark of the Wild buff to give everybody 3% verse, and then we also have like Ursol's Vortex that helps make sure that nothing runs away, or at least it clumps up. Most of the time, Ursol's Vortex isn't to stop stuff from running away, because the dungeons that I've tested, I don't think of anything. I don't think I know of anything that's like deliberately running away. However, there are things like on the first boss in Ruby Pools where the imps come out, or not the imps, the whelps come out. And if the whelps come out and everybody starts damaging them before the tank got full aggro on them, which happens all the time, I did it several times, then you can put Vortex down and you can group them all up around the boss, or you can Typhoon them, or you can Vortex them and Typhoon them, which will just shoot them into your Vortex, and so on and so forth. So like, we have a lot of very good utility, and on top of that, especially while things are doing massive amount of damage, which requires a ton of healing, we have Innervate now, so we can Innervate. Now, I do want to shout out to our Blizzard dev somewhere, somebody that watches this, please get it fixed, is that Innervate shifts us out of form when we use it, and it's super inconvenient and it's super annoying, because it's just a buff, right? It's a buff for another player. It should not shift us out of form. And I don't think there's anything that could change my mind about that. It's literally a buff for a healer that we can gain to assist them, and it shifts us out of cat form. I'm sure we can Tiger's Fury to get ourselves instantly back in, but it's super annoying because you don't know when that's going to happen. You don't know if you're going to have a Tiger's Fury to really offset it, so on and so forth. So you definitely want to. It should just be a capable ability inside Feral, as well as Rebirth. Rebirth 100% should be castable inside Feral form. Even if it is a full cast and not an instant cast like Bear or something like that, that's perfectly fine. It doesn't need to be instant cast. Just literally let it be castable inside Feral form so we don't have to shift around it in order to use it properly. Um, so some of my grievances there. But yeah, Mythic Plus is kind of in a weird state right now. It is interesting to actually like get to play with things living a little bit longer and see some of the damage of some of these mobs because before you just kind of raffle stomped all the way through them. So it is nice to see those, and I look forward to testing it more throughout the weekend and seeing what else we can figure out from the limited amount of testing that we're allowed to do. The biggest thing is I hope that they fix the issues with sharding and being able to teleport to dungeons, and then obviously fix the dungeons and give us the rest of the dungeons to test out. My biggest fear across season one is actually going to be Halls of Valor because I did a lot of Halls of Valor back in the day and during Legion, and it was not the it was very pretty dungeon, but it is not my favorite dungeon as far as how long it is, the level of difficulty that there is in there as far as getting one shot by things, the amount of casters, so on and so forth. There's a lot of issues inside Halls of Valor, so I'm very worried about that. Not so much with the other dungeons that are going to be added in there. Um, it's pretty much Halls of Valor, and then how the new dungeons are actually played and affected when scaled up, because there's things like casters that continuously shoot that you don't realize how much damage they're doing until you actually do it at a decent level key, and decent level currently is level 10. And they did increase the Mythic Plus rewards up to level 20s, where you can get 421 out of your vault if you do plus 20s, which is very high item level. It is Mythic quality item level gear. Uh, and if a plus 10 is as difficult as it is right now, then a lot of players might have issues getting up to that plus 20 range, especially when 15s are killing some of the best Mythic players in the world currently. Obviously, it's they're playing in gear that won't be as high as the gear they have when they go in there and play it, but it's still like you can gauge that it's going to be decently difficult. And most season one stuff is difficult, especially to get in that 20 plus range for a lot of players. So I am hoping that they look into it just a tad and start tweaking things very quickly, because we do have a couple more weeks before things start being a big concern. But I do hope that they start rolling out more of this for us to test, because Mythic Plus is one of the most time spent activities inside World of Warcraft now. Um, and I hope that they allow us to test it so we can fix it before it becomes live and things become blocked by one-shot things or things that are mandatory to skip. And if you accidentally pull a dragon that's kiting around in circles, you're just dead. Or the group's just dead, or you have to reset or something like that. So I really hope that the changes do come. Um, but past that, if you guys have any ideas or anything that I missed, anything that I should know, let me know. If you guys have any further builds for Feral Druids, let me know. And, let's keep chatting about Feral Druids, and I'll keep trying to keep you guys updated with my ideas and the things that are changing on beta for us going into Dragonflight. And past that, like and subscribe to the channel if you guys want to keep up to date on the content I'm creating. Past that, I'll see you guys in the next video.